Welcome back, everyone. For more creepypastas, please hit that subscribe button. This one was sent in by an anonymous user. Feel free to send in your own stories through the link in the description. I do not, however, own this story, nor its creation. So, without further ado, let's begin. It all started when I was 16 years old, and I was babysitting for a family in my neighborhood. The mother, who I'll call Sarah, had 2 children, a boy and a girl. She would frequently go out with her husband and leave me alone with the kids for the night. It was honestly great because I was saving up money for college at the time and they paid me a lot. Also, the kids were well behaved. They went to bed early, and I spent most of the night watching TV or playing video games. One night, though, things got weird. Sarah called me about an hour after she left to let me know that she forgot to leave the spare key. She asked if I could let the dog out, which wasn't a big deal. I went into the backyard with the dog and let him do his business. Then I brought him back in and closed the door. As I walked back towards the house, I heard crying coming from the kids' room. I assumed that it was the girl, so I didn't think much of it. I went back to the living room to watch TV, but the crying continued. I could hear the baby getting louder and more upset, so I went back to check on her. When I got to the room, the baby was still crying. I picked her up and started to rock her, but then she stopped crying and stared at me. I thought it was weird, but I figured that she probably just wanted to be held. I walked back down the stairs with her, and as I passed the living room, I saw my reflection in the TV screen. I stopped and stared at the baby in my arms. It wasn't my reflection that was weird, it was what was behind me. In the reflection, I saw another baby sitting on the stairs staring directly at me. I was so shocked that I dropped the baby and turned around, but there was no one there. I looked back at the TV, and the baby was gone. I ran back upstairs to check on the babies, and I don't remember exactly what happened next. I think I called Sarah, but I can't really remember. All I know is that when I got to the room, both babies were gone. I searched everywhere but couldn't find them. I was freaking out, so I ended up calling the police. When they got there, I told them everything that had happened. Of course, they didn't believe me at first. Why would a cop believe a 16-year-old babysitter who claimed that a baby disappeared? I insisted that they check the house just in case, but they didn't seem convinced. As they were leaving, I heard a noise in the closet. I immediately told the officers to come listen, but they ignored me and drove off. A few minutes later, Sarah came in and started yelling at me for letting the babies out of the house. I tried to explain what had happened, but she wouldn't listen. She kept saying that I was lying and making the whole thing up. I didn't know what to do. I was scared that the babies had actually gotten out of the house and were lost somewhere outside, or even worse, taken by someone. But Sarah refused to call the police again, insisting that I had done that already. We searched the house and the yard, but we couldn't find either of the babies. And that's when I knew something was wrong. I hadn't imagined the second baby. There was another baby, and I was certain that Sarah had something to do with it. She stopped acting like it was all my fault and started crying hysterically. She called the police and told them that her babies were missing. They took off again. I never saw either of those babies again. I did see Sarah a couple of times over the next few months, but every time I tried to talk to her about what happened, she just yelled at me and walked away. I was babysitting for that family until I went to college. Whenever I think about what happened that night, I still get freaked out. And that's all for this episode. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you all next time. Hey everyone! Welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be about a man who found a mirror that blinked at him. Let's get into it. There was a man who lived alone. He was very lonely. So one day he went out looking for a wife. As he walked, he came across an old antique store, and when he opened the door, a bell chimed. An old, fat man looked up from behind the counter. "Can I help you?" asked the man. The customer shook his head and walked around the store. There were all kinds of weird things in there: clocks, lamps, paintings, jewelry, and so on. But what caught the man's attention was a large mirror in the corner. It was ornately carved with flowers and vines, and its surface was like a black hole, sucking the light from everything around it. The man had never seen such a beautiful mirror, and asked the owner about it. The old man said it was an enchanted mirror and asked the man if he wanted to buy it. Of course, the man said yes, but he was surprised when the old man told him the price. "That's too much money," he said. "Son," replied the old man, "you don't have to buy it if you don't want to. It's just a mirror." The man thought for a moment. Then he said, "I'll take it." They agreed on a price, and the man carried the heavy mirror out of the store and into his life. At first, the man was happy with his purchase. He put it in his bedroom and admired its beauty every day. One morning, the man was shaving in his bathroom. Suddenly, he felt something wet on his cheek. He looked in the mirror and saw that he had cut himself. But that wasn't what shocked him. What shocked him was that his reflection had a smile on its face, as if it was amused by his clumsiness. The man thought he was imagining things. After all, how could a reflection smile? Just then, the reflection smiled again, and this time it winked. The man jumped back in surprise and dropped his razor. He stared at the mirror, his heart pounding in his chest. Then he did something crazy. He ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and came back to the bathroom. With shaking hands, he began to carve the face of the mirror. At first, it was difficult, but as he carved more and more, he started to feel a strange sense of calm. When he finally finished, he stepped back to admire his work. The face in the mirror was now contorted in a silent scream. The man smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction he had never felt before. A few days went by, and the man became obsessed with carving the face of the mirror. He would spend hours in the bathroom, lost in his work. The face in the mirror became his only focus, didn't care about anything else. One day the man was so engrossed in his work that he didn't hear the doorbell when it rang. It rang again, and this time he heard a knock on the door. He stopped what he was doing and went to answer the door. When he opened it, he saw two men standing there. "Are you the man who lives here?" they asked. The man nodded. "We're here to see the old mirror," they said. "What mirror?" asked the man. "The one in your house?" said one of the men. "We know there's an enchanted mirror in there, and we want to buy it." The man hesitated, but he didn't want to admit that he knew about the mirror's magical powers. So he lied and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." The men looked at each other and smiled. "We know you're hiding something," said one of them. "Let us in." The man tried to stop them, but it was too late. The men pushed past him and entered the house. They walked to the bathroom and stared at the mirror. "So this is the famous mirror," said one of them. "It's not what I expected," said the other. "I thought it would be bigger." The man who owned the mirror felt a surge of anger. How dare these strangers come into his house and criticize his property? He had put up with their rudeness long enough. He grabbed the knife he had used to carve the mirror and lunged at the men. They screamed and fell to the ground, but not before the man saw the look on their faces. It was the same look he had seen in the mirror after he had carved it. It was a look of silent screams. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. A college student was doing his very best to make it through finals week. All of his hard work was about to pay off. He just had to get through one more final exam, and then he'd be able to relax for a few months. As soon as the last final ended, the student practically ran to his apartment. He hadn't eaten all day and was absolutely famished. He fumbled with his keys, eager to get inside and make himself something to eat. Finally, he heard the familiar click, and he pushed open the door and walked inside. That's when he noticed that something was wrong, very wrong. At first he thought that he was still tired from studying and that his eyes were playing tricks on him. But no, this wasn't a trick of the light or his tired eyes. Everything in his apartment had been moved. He looked around in disbelief. The couch was now facing the window instead of the TV. The rug was rolled up and placed in the corner. And his desk was in the kitchen. What the hell had happened? Had someone broken into his apartment while he was taking his final? He checked the windows. They were all closed and locked. Plus, he would have heard someone breaking in if that was the case. So who had done this? Shaken but determined to get to the bottom of this, the student started to move things back to their original places. Maybe if he could figure out what had happened, whoever was responsible would leave a clue. As he placed the couch back under the window, he noticed something on the wall. He moved the lamp and saw that one of the photo frames had been taken down and replaced with another. He picked up the frame and examined it closely. It was a picture of a young woman with long flowing hair. But the face didn't belong to his ex-girlfriend. He had never seen this woman before in his life. Puzzled, he placed the frame back on the table and moved on. But as he did, he noticed something else. Dear Wild. Every single picture frame in the apartment had been replaced with a new photograph. Each one showed a different person, and none of them were people the student recognized. Had these people been here? Were they the ones who had rearranged his apartment? With each passing moment, the student felt more and more disturbed. Why would someone break into his apartment and replace his pictures? Was this some kind of sick joke? He took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Thinking about the bigger picture, it seemed unlikely that a burglar had broken in just to switch out his pictures. There had to be another explanation. Last month, he had posted on social media that he was looking for a roommate for the next semester. Could it be that one of the people he had met had snuck in while he was taking his final? But if so, why? He racked his brain trying to think of an answer. Maybe they wanted to give him a surprise welcome home. Maybe they were trying to help him by giving him new pictures for his apartment. But the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. Just as he was about to give up, he noticed something strange about the locks on the doors. They'd all been changed. His deadbolt was gone, and there were new handles on all the doors. Who had done this? Was it really his roommate? He had only met a few people who had responded to his post, but none of them had mentioned anything about coming over to check out the apartment. And besides, even if they had, he would have been with his friends. He wouldn't have left the apartment empty. Suddenly, the student felt a chill run down his spine. What if it wasn't his roommate? What if someone had broken in, changed all the locks, and replaced his pictures in order to set up a trap? But a trap for what, and why? Suddenly, the word "welcome home" flashed across his mind. Was someone trying to trick him into thinking that nothing had happened? As he stood there thinking, the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. He had a feeling that he was not alone. In today's video, I will be reading from the series The Haunted Baby Monitor. So let's jump into it. A new mother heard her baby crying on the monitor. She rushed unknowingly to find her child fast asleep. The crying continued, louder through the device. It was 3 a.m., and Amelia was awoken in her bed by what sounded like her 5-month-old daughter crying out for help. Her husband, Mark, was out on a business trip, so she was alone except for her 2 cats, Midnight and Shadow. She got up and went over to the baby monitor, which was displaying live footage of her sleeping baby. She could have sworn that she heard little sobs coming from her baby. "Ella," she whispered, rushing over to her daughter's crib. The baby monitor was still on the nightstand beside the crib. As she approached, the crying got louder. But when she reached the crib, she noticed that her daughter was sleeping peacefully. What was that? She wondered aloud, turning back to the monitor. Wow. On the screen, Ella appeared to be stirring slightly, but she quickly went back to sleep. The monitor crackled with static. Then Amelia heard a noise that made her blood run cold. It was the sound of a woman sobbing. "Hello? Is someone there?" She called out, her voice trembling slightly. All she received in response was more static. Shaking off the unease that had suddenly fallen upon her, she went back to bed. As she snuggled under the covers beside her sleeping husband, she couldn't help but shiver. She told Mark about the strange noises she had heard, but he simply dismissed them as her imagination playing tricks on her. He, too, had heard the odd sound in the middle of the night and assumed that their old house was settling, or maybe it was just the pipes. Either way, he knew that their home was full of strange sounds at night, and he didn't think much of it. And so, as the weeks went by, Amelia got used to hearing these noises. Most nights she would hear what sounded like whispers and murmurs, and sometimes she could even hear footsteps in the hallway outside her daughter's room. However, most of these sounds occurred after her husband left for work and during the day, so she never really gave it a second thought. One afternoon, though, as Amelia was changing a diaper on her kitchen floor, she heard a knock on the baby monitor. Startled, she dropped the diaper and went to investigate. It was the same sound she had heard on the monitor the night before. She picked up the monitor and walked towards the baby's room, listening intently. The knock came again, followed by the sound of small footsteps, and then she heard a voice. It was the same voice she had heard on the monitor the night before. "Is there?" she called out, her heart pounding in her chest. No one answered. And as she stood there listening, the sound of footsteps grew louder. Suddenly, she felt a cold breeze on her neck, and she turned around to see that the door to her daughter's room was wide open. In the crib, her daughter was sleeping soundly.
Out.
But then she started to cry. As she rushed over to the crib, the monitor crackled with static, and then she heard a voice. "Me. Leave my baby alone," it said. Startled, she dropped the monitor and hurried back to her daughter, scooping her up and holding her close. She could feel her daughter's tiny body shaking with sobs, and then she saw it. On the monitor, a shadowy figure was standing over her sleeping baby. Amelia screamed and ran out of the room, her daughter still in her arms. She could hear the monitor crackling behind her, the shadowy figure moving closer and closer to where she was hiding. She could feel her daughter's breathing on her shoulder, and she knew that she had to get away. She ran down the hallway and into her bedroom, slamming the door behind her. She could hear the monitor crackling and the footsteps getting closer and closer. Then the voice said, "Give me back my baby." Amelia pressed her daughter close, trying to block out the sounds of the monitor. She could feel her own fear and her daughter's fear, and she knew that she had to do something. As the voice grew louder and the footsteps pounded against the door, she knew that she wasn't safe. The monitor was right beside her bed, and she could feel the vibrations of the voice as it pounded against the door. "Let me in!" it screamed. "Let me in and give me back my baby!" And so that is the story. Do you believe in ghosts? Let me know your thoughts. Anyways, thanks for watching. And if you like this sort of content, check out the series. Also, please do not forget to like and subscribe so that I can continue making videos like this. Anyways, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye. Hello, friends. A girl went to the bathroom to take a picture of herself. She wanted to send it to her boyfriend. He always complained that she never sent him pictures. But when she was done taking the picture, she looked at it and screamed. How is this possible? There was an extra girl in the reflection who wasn't there when she took the picture. The girl quickly deleted the picture. She didn't want anyone to see it. The girl tried again, but the same thing happened. Every time she took a picture, there was a creepy girl smiling in the back. The girl was scared. Who was that girl and how did she get there? The girl decided to take another picture and then block the girl in the back. She could only think of one way to do this. She went to the bathroom stall and turned off the light. It was dark, and she couldn't see anything. So she took another picture. This time there was no girl in the back. When she got home, she showed the picture to her mom. "Look, Mom, no girl in the back." Her mom looked at the picture and said, "Oh, honey, there's a girl in the back, but you can't see her very well because it's dark. But I took the picture in a bathroom stall. The light was off." "Oh, honey, that's just your imagination. There's no girl in the back. Let's go get some ice cream." The girl was still scared, but she liked ice cream, so she agreed. At the ice cream shop, the girl couldn't stop thinking about the girl in the reflection. Was her mom right? Was it just her imagination? When they got home, the girl went straight to her room. She took out her phone and opened up the pictures. She looked at the first picture. The girl in the back was smiling, but now she noticed something else. She was holding a knife. The girl screamed and dropped her phone. The girl quickly picked up her phone and deleted the picture. Then she remembered what her mom said. Maybe it was just her imagination. She looked at the second picture, the one she took in the bathroom stall. The girl in the back wasn't smiling anymore. She was crying. The girl was scared, but she didn't want to admit it. She thought being scared was for babies. She threw the phone on her bed and went to the bathroom. She took another picture, but she didn't look at it. She didn't want to see the girl in the back. Suddenly, she heard a knock on the door. "Who's there?" she asked. "It's me," said her mom. "Can I come in?" "Sure," said the girl. When her mom walked in, she saw the girl's phone on the bed. On the screen was a picture of the bathroom. There was no girl in the back, but her mom could see something else. It was the reflection of the bathroom door. The door was slightly open. A small crack of light was coming through the gap. "Oh, honey," said her mom, "you were just imagining things." The girl nodded, but she knew her mom was wrong. She could feel it. The hair on her neck stood up. The girl and her mom walked out of the bathroom together. When they were in the hall, the girl looked down. She saw the reflection of the bathroom door in her mom's eyes. The door was wide open. On an average day on the road, truckers are used to seeing all kinds of things out of the corner of their eyes. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, and some of it is just plain strange. That was certainly the case for a trucker who picked up what would be described as a hitchhiking woman on Route 66, also known as the Mother Road. She reportedly jumped into the back of his rig and disappeared after talking to him for 10 minutes. And when he turned around, she wasn't there. In fact, there was no sign of her at all. except for a small puddle left behind in the truck seat where she had been sitting. Let's take a look at this strange tale that has some people believing there may be a portal or wormhole located somewhere along the historic highway. It all started in March of 2014 when a man identified only as Bob was driving his truck on Route 66 near Eerie, Oklahoma. According to Bob, he was heading west on the highway when he noticed a woman standing by the road wearing a white dress. It didn't take long for Bob to realize that the woman was hitchhiking, so he pulled over to the side of the road to pick her up. He said the woman appeared to be in her mid to late 20s and was soaking wet, according to her. She'd been walking along the highway for quite some time and was extremely thirsty. Bob offered her water from his truck and she gladly accepted. But the weird part of the story is that once she got into the back of the truck and they started talking, she began telling him all sorts of things about himself. She knew things about him that he never told her, including his name, his wife's name, and even details about his truck. Bob was taken aback by this, but he continued to drive while she talked. For 10 minutes, she talked non-stop, but then she suddenly stopped. At first, Bob thought maybe she was just resting, but when he glanced back at her, he saw that she was gone. He said that he searched the entire truck but couldn't find her anywhere. And not only that, but he couldn't find any evidence that she had ever been there at all. The only thing out of place was a small puddle of rainwater that had accumulated in the seat where she had been sitting. Bob pulled over to the side of the road and got out of his truck to see if he could find any footprints or tire tracks. But everything was perfectly dry, which was strange since it had been raining heavily the night before. He called the police, but they couldn't find anything either. To this day, no one knows what happened to the hitchhiker or where she vanished to. Bob says that he will never forget the look on his passenger side mirror when he saw the woman standing on the side of the road. But aside from that, he has no clue what happened to her or why she knew so much about him. Some have speculated that the woman may have been a government agent of some kind, while others believe that she might have been a time traveler. There are even some who think that she could have been a hitchhiking alien. However, none of these theories have any real evidence to support them. There is a theory that a portal or wormhole could be located somewhere along the historic Route 66, which is also known as the Mother Road. This is due to the fact that there are many unexplained phenomena that have been reported along the highway, including UFO sightings, mysterious lights in the sky, and even strange creatures that have been described as Bigfoot or the Lizard Man. While there is no evidence to support the existence of a portal or wormhole, some believe that it is possible that there could be a natural anomaly in the area that causes these strange occurrences. If there is one thing we can be sure of, it's that there are still many mysteries yet to be solved in our world. And who knows? Maybe one day we will discover that there is a portal or wormhole located somewhere along Route 66. Until then, though, we can only speculate. So do you believe the woman in the torn white dress actually vanished? Or do you have another explanation for what happened to her? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and leave a like. And as always, thanks for watching. Welcome to my channel. The following story was submitted by a user. I was 16 years old and living with my mom, dad, and little brother, who was 4. My brother was a happy kid, always playing and smiling. We lived in an old house that had a lot of knickknacks and antiques passed down from previous generations. One of these antiques was an old black wax candle that sat on a shelf in the hallway. It was the size of a soda can and was wrapped in a brown paper towel with string sticking out the top. The candle had never been used and had sat on the shelf for as long as I could remember. One day when I was homesick from school, I got bored and decided to explore the house. I went into the attic and found a book on how to perform magic tricks. Of course, I didn't have any of the supplies listed in the book, so I went back downstairs to look for something to use instead. That's when I saw the candle and thought I could use it as a replacement. I took the candle and performed the summoning ritual from the book. It didn't do anything except make me feel like I was in a horror movie. Later that night, I told my mom what I had done, and she said I shouldn't have messed with that candle. She said it was an antique and had been passed down through our family for generations. Apparently the candle was cursed and no one was supposed to light it. She told me to get rid of it in the morning, but I was too scared to do anything with it in the middle of the night. The next morning after I threw the candle away, my mom told me we needed to go to my aunt's house. When we got there, I told her what I had done, and she told me to say a prayer over the candle before we put it out. After that, everything seemed fine, and I felt bad for listening to that stupid book. The next night, my mom woke me up because she was having a nightmare. She said she was drowning in a lake and couldn't get to the surface. She said she tried to scream for help, but no sound came out. Then she woke up and was gasping for air. She told me to stay with her until she fell back asleep. Then my brother came in and asked why I wasn't in my bed. I told him I was watching TV and he went back to his room. After my mom went back to sleep, I went back to mine. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom drowning in a lake. I tried to tell myself it was just a dream, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I got up and went to my mom's room, but she was still sleeping. I didn't want to wake her up, so I went back to my room. This happened every night for a week straight. My mom would have nightmares, and I would spend all night watching over her. I was exhausted and didn't know what to do, so I called my aunt for help. She performed another ritual over the phone and told me to be strong because the candle wanted to take my family. That night, my mom didn't have a nightmare, but the next night, she did again. She drowned in a lake. Again, I watched over her all night, and in the morning I was pale and had dark circles under my eyes. My mom didn't go to work that day. She stayed home with me until my aunt came over. She said that the candle had taken my mom, but it hadn't fully taken her yet. It was still tethered to this world by my little brother. She told us that we had to get rid of the candle, but this time we had to burn it. I was scared, but I knew that if I didn't do something, my mom would keep having nightmares and eventually drown in real life. I held the candle while my mom and aunt stood back. I closed my eyes and lit the candle. Black smoke rose from the candle as I held it over the sink and watched it melt away. After the candle burned out, my mom and aunt embraced. They were both crying. My aunt told me that we were free from the candle, but it was too late. That's when I heard my little brother come into the bathroom. He was smiling and asked what was for breakfast. He had a blank stare on his face and looked like a zombie. I was scared, but I knew that I had to be strong for my mom. I forced a smile and said that we were going to go to the local diner. As I walked to my brother's room, I turned around and looked at my mom. She was kneeling on the floor and had a sad expression on her face. She looked at me and mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." Then she turned back around and kept staring at the floor. I didn't know it at the time, but that was the last time I would ever see her. When I got to my brother's room, he was already dressed and ready to go. He looked at me and said, "Let's go to Denny's," and then he walked out of the room. As I followed him, I turned back to look at my mom. She was still on the floor, and I could see the outline of a candle on her chest. I don't remember anything after that. I don't know about you guys, but there's just something about the sound of a crying baby that just gets me every single time. In today's story, a new mother hears her baby crying on the monitor and she goes to check on him only to find out he was perfectly fine the whole time. But then the crying continued, and this time it was coming from the monitor itself. It was a dark and stormy night. Rain was pouring down in sheets and thunder rattled the windows. Inside, a young mother named Emily was getting her 3-month-old son, Ethan, ready for bed. After a long day of playing, he was fussy and tired and needed some rest. As she put him down in his crib, she turned on the baby monitor so she could keep an eye on him, while she got some work done in the home office just down the hall. Every so often, Emily would hear Ethan make little noises and she would smile. It was cute when babies made those little noises. Sometimes it sounded like he was in pain or discomfort, but most of the time it was just gas. This time, though, Emily heard a loud cry. She looked up from her work, but before she could get up to go check on him, she heard another cry, this one even louder than the last. Rushing into the nursery, she found Ethan sleeping soundly in his crib. Had she imagined the crying? Maybe she thought as she went back to her work. But just as she began to concentrate again, she heard the monitor crackle to life. Then she heard a small, distinct voice that was definitely not her son's. "H-E-L-P," it said. Startled, Emily dropped her phone, and it clattered to the floor. She stared at the monitor, unsure if what she had just heard was real, or if it was just a figment of her imagination. Hadn't her husband Mark just told her that there were no electrical problems with the house? The power had been out for weeks after the storm that hit a few days ago, but they finally got it fixed yesterday. Could the monitor be haunted? Emily thought. Suddenly the monitor flickered, and the static came back. Emily jumped. Was that the wind? No, the window was closed. Then she heard the voice again, louder this time. "Help me," it cried. "I'm scared." Was someone in the house with her? Emily thought, suddenly terrified. She couldn't see anything in the darkness, but she could hear the scratching now, too. It sounded like someone or something was moving about in the attic above her office. She needed to tell Mark, but as she reached for the phone to call him, the monitor crackled again. "Don't go," a voice whispered, and this time she could make out the shape of a little girl in the flickering light. "Don't go, please," the girl begged. Emily gasped and dropped the phone. Who was this girl? Why was she in their house? And why was she on their baby monitor? As Emily watched in horror, the girl on the screen seemed to grow older, transforming from a little girl into a young woman. "Help me!" she cried, her voice echoing through the room. "I need your help." The monitor flickered, and the room was plunged into darkness. When it turned back on, the young woman was gone, and all Emily could see was her reflection in the screen. Stunned by what she had just seen, Emily didn't move. What was happening here? Then she heard a small voice behind her. "Mommy? What's wrong?" It was Ethan. He had gotten out of his crib and was standing in the doorway looking at her with wide, innocent eyes. Emily knelt down and hugged him. "Nothing, sweetheart," she whispered. "It's just a bad dream." But as she looked back at the monitor, she knew that whatever was going on, it was only just beginning. Welcome to my channel. This is the ritual candle. It was a normal day for a curious 16-year-old boy named Finn. He was bored out of his mind. So he decided to go to the local thrift store to see if they had anything interesting. That's when he saw it, an oddly shaped black candle that looked ancient. It was unlike any other candle he'd ever seen before, and for some reason, he felt drawn to it. He bought the candle and went home without telling anyone, put the candle on his bedside table, but he couldn't stop thinking about how strange it looked. The wax had an oily texture, and it seemed to almost be moving. But when he tried to get a closer look, it stopped. Maybe he was just imagining things. After all, it was just a candle. The next day, Finn woke up early. For some reason, he couldn't remember dreaming at all. That was weird. So usually he would have at least 1 or 2 dreams to remember. But this morning, nothing. As he got up, he noticed his mom looked pale and was moving slower than usual. She was normally full of energy, so something was definitely wrong. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said with a weak smile. "I just had the weirdest dream. I was drowning, but I couldn't make a sound. Then I woke up. That's so weird," Finn replied. He didn't know what to say. He had never heard his mom talk like that. It's because of the candle. Later that day, his dad came home looking worried. "What happened to your mother?" Finn asked. "She passed out while making dinner. The doctor said it might have been a nightmare. That's scary." "Yeah," Finn said, remembering his mom's dream from earlier. Could the candle be causing these nightmares? He thought it was possible. So the next night, he decided to get rid of it. He took the candle into the bathroom and dropped it into the bathtub. Just then, his little brother Max walked in. "What are you doing?" he asked. "I'm getting rid of this cursed candle," Finn said. "Cursed? What do you mean?" Max asked. "I think it's giving our parents nightmares. I don't want to find out what happens on night 7, so I'm throwing it away," Finn explained. Max thought for a moment. "Actually, I'm kind of scared too. Let's just get rid of it," he said. So they wrapped the candle in several layers of newspaper and threw it into the trash can. They both hoped that whatever this candle's curse was, it wouldn't reach them. The next morning, Finn woke up in a panic. He had a terrible nightmare about him and Max drowning in a dark ocean. When he told his dad about it, his dad looked even more worried than before. "We need to find that candle," he said. "Why?" Finn asked. "'Cause I had the same dream last night," his dad replied. "And Mom nearly drowned while making breakfast. We have to destroy that candle." They searched through the trash, but it was no longer there. Suddenly, Max ran into the room. "Guys, we have to come see this," he said. Outside, they saw the most horrifying scene. All the neighbors were standing around staring at their house. "What happened?" Finn's dad asked. "Your house isn't on fire, is it?" "No," said one of the neighbors. "I'm sorry, but your son called 911 and hung up. I was just heading over to check if everything was all right. Is everything okay?" Yeah, I guess," Finn replied. He lied. Something was wrong, very wrong. When they went inside, they found that water was pouring out of the walls and ceiling. How could this happen? Finn's dad said in disbelief. "I don't know," Finn replied, feeling guilty. It was all because of him and the stupid candle. Then they heard sirens in the distance. Soon firefighters were running around with hoses trying to put out the fire. "It's too late," said one of the firefighters. The whole house is going to burn down. Everyone started screaming and running away. Finn and his family stood there paralyzed with fear. On the 7th night, the candle burned and destroyed the house. This is what happens when you mess with magic, the unknown, or anything that's not yours to mess with. And it's why you should never buy an old black candle from a thrift store. The spirits inside those things are not happy and will haunt you until you are dead. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this spooky story, please leave a like and subscribe for more content. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be very interesting because it has all of the makings of a horror film. The story takes place in Denver, and it was posted on Reddit by a user named Maybe With Teeth. So let's jump right into it. I've lived in my apartment for almost 3 years. It's an older building, but very nice. I'm on the 2nd floor, and above me is a vacant apartment. For the last few months, I have been hearing what I thought were squirrels or mice in the vents above my bedroom's ceiling. My bedroom is on the south side of the apartment, and the walls are very thin. I can hear my neighbors talking, coughing, sneezing, etc. Well, last week it started to get really cold in Denver, and I started hearing this scratching every single night between 1 and 4 a.m. when it would be below freezing outside. I assumed that whatever it was trying to get warm inside the apartment. Then last night, the scratching was happening again, and I saw a tiny hole in the vent cover in my ceiling with what looked like teeth marks around it. I called the police non-emergency line and explained what was going on. They said that an officer would be sent out to check it out. I asked if maybe animal control would be better, since I wasn't sure if it was an animal, and the officer said no. About an hour later, a police car was parked outside my apartment, and an officer was at my door asking if I had heard anything. I let him in, and he checked the vent in my ceiling with a flashlight and listened. He then went out on my balcony and looked around on the roof. He came back in and asked me a bunch of questions about when I started hearing the noise, what it sounded like, etc. Which I found odd, since I had already told him over the phone pretty much the same things I told him in person. But whatever, I answered his questions. He took my phone number and said that he was going to investigate and get back to me if he'd figured out what was going on. Fast forward to this morning. I wake up and there is a bigger hole in my vent now. So I call the police again, and this time I asked for an update on my case from last night. The lady I spoke to looked up my information and said, "Oh yeah, we sent a guy out last night to check your ceiling." I told her that they did and that he found another hole in the vent. She said, "Oh," without any emotion whatsoever, and transferred me to the records department to file a police report. I told them what happened last night, and that the officer didn't seem to think it was important enough to take a report last night. The lady at records said that she would just file it as an animal complaint, and that an animal control officer would be sent out to check it. I asked if I could please have a police officer come out, since I felt uncomfortable having an animal control officer come alone to my apartment. But she said that they were busy and that an animal control officer would be out as soon as possible. So here I am sitting in my apartment waiting for animal control, while still hearing the scratching in my ceiling. About 30 minutes after I hung up the phone, I heard loud footsteps above my apartment, followed by heavy banging on my ceiling, then silence. Now it's been about 2 hours since I last spoke to the police, and I haven't heard anything yet. Update. An hour ago, I heard more banging and scratching in the ceiling. I grabbed my baseball bat and went to investigate. Turns out the entire vent cover had fallen out of the ceiling and was laying on my floor. It looks like whoever or whatever was up there managed to chew through the sheet metal. That sounds horrible. I hope OP updated the story. I would be so scared to have some animal, especially a human being, living in my vents and chewing through the vents. That's crazy. And then the story gets even crazier. Update 2. Animal control showed up about 20 minutes after I posted this. An older gentleman who seemed to know what was going on immediately went up on my roof and started checking out the vent that goes to my apartment. Meanwhile, a younger officer asked me a bunch of questions and tried to get me to sign a paper saying that everything was okay and that I didn't need any further police assistance. I told him that I wanted to press charges for harassment, but that I needed to find out first if this was a person or an animal. The younger officer seemed frustrated that I wouldn't just drop it. But eventually, the older officer came down from the roof and told me that someone had been living in my vent. Apparently, they had made multiple 911 calls from the apartment above me for various reasons, and the police had actually sent officers out to check on multiple occasions. On one occasion, officers were sent out to do a wellness check on the resident above me, and they actually climbed into the apartment through the balcony because the front door was locked. That's how they knew that somebody was in there. They also found a lot of trash bags full of what looked like old clothes and blankets in the vent shaft. The officers said that whoever it was had most likely made a nest up there and had been living in there for several months. According to the residents' history, they had been in and out of the apartment for the last year and a half.
Oh?
And they had apparently been arrested earlier this year for trespassing in another apartment complex. Because of this, the police are considering it a trespassing case and not an animal issue. They are planning to arrest the individual when they are located and hopefully get them some help. Yeah, wow. Okay, that's definitely crazy. Sometimes people do crazy things. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to tune in for more just like it. See you next time.